under the Teide Mountain, a family of pilot whales can be found. They have been swimming together in this area for decades. This pod will stay together for their whole life. They will travel the ocean, hunt, breathe and raise their young together. A life in synchrony.
My name is Iro, and I'm a Darwin 200 leader. I am here in Tenerife studying the conservation of pilot whales.
It's a biodiversity hotspot. It's extremely important. The thing is, this does not reflect on the protection of this area. So even though you have this area that everyone speaks of its high value, and it's under Natura 2000 and under Mission Blue protected status, and it's the first European whale heritage site, which is major title. You go there and the reality is not what you expect.
Welcome to another episode of the Rising Lioness. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Iro Tsarmpopoulou-Fokianou, the creator of Guanches of the Sea, a 3-part oceanic conservation docuseries and a Darwin 200 project. Darwin 200 is a planetary conservation initiative that aims to nurture the conservation leaders of tomorrow, transform the world into the most exciting classroom, and engage in citizen science research. Iro is a social anthropologist, and a passionate conservation enthusiast. She has collaborated with various NGOs such as the Jane Goodall Institute, Sea-Watch Foundation, Sea Shepherd Greece, and Anima. Recently, Iro joined the Darwin 200 Conservation Project as a Darwin leader, where she conducted research and produced Guanches of the Sea, a series about the short-finned pilot whales in Tenerife. Iro hopes to continue conducting research for the benefit of conservation and animal protection, and hopes to one day have a wildlife sanctuary of her own. And unfortunately, filmmaker Lorimer McAndrew couldn't be here with us today as he was called away last minute, but we totally understand and we miss you and we thank you for your work. Lorimer is a filmmaker, musician, and one of the earlier contributors to the Darwin 200 initiative. And with that, I just want to say, Iro, welcome. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to have you here with us today. And we're eager to learn about all of your projects in the world of conservation and your experience with the Darwin 200. So
thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for taking time out. I know you just got back from another project, and if we have some time, we'll talk about that too. But I thought maybe we could start a little bit about you sharing your background and how that influenced your passion for conservation filmmaking.
Right. Hello again. I'm Iro. I'm from Greece. And my background, I always loved animals in the environment. From a very young age, it was pretty clear that this was like my route in life. It was also something that was cultivated a lot from my family. Like all my childhood, I spent watching documentaries and, the BBC and National Geographic about the big cats and everything. And so growing up, I wanted to work with animals. I didn't know how. Veterinary school went through my mind. Then I wanted to be a zoologist. I wanted to do documentaries. I ended up studying social anthropology because I couldn't study zoology in Greece. There wasn't a degree for zoology. And then at that time, and still today, I was a huge fan of Jane Goodall, of course, who in conservation isn't.
Sure.
And I knew that she studied anthropology. It was one of her many degrees. So I was like, okay, I will study anthropology and I will make my way to the animals via the humanities. And so I studied social anthropology in Athens. And sure enough, it turned out to be a very good choice because then when I had the chance to do my thesis for my bachelor's, I chose to do it on whales. So I was in Iceland at the moment. I was doing an exchange program. And I did research for my thesis on whales, on the cultural significance of whales and human-whale interactions. And so this is kind of what opened this door, like more directly, this door into conservation for me, because I realized which I kind of was hoping and expecting, but then it became evident that the humanities are and should be a big part of conservation and the other way around. So conservation isn't only about biologists conducting research and collecting samples. It's research all around society. And of course, society is very sadly dominated by humans. Humans are a big part of the natural world as well. And so, in my point of view, when we talk about conservation and wildlife, it's very important also to keep in mind the human factor. And so, this is kind of like how it has been for me. And then, since that, it was like the most positive domino effect, because then I went to the Jane Goodall Institute. I did my internship there. Then I did with like Sea Watch Foundation, Sea Shepherd, and then of course the Darwin Project.
That's incredible. That's a great path. And it sounds like it was just absolutely meant to be. And the more people I speak with, the more I learn that, just like myself, the love of animals and the environment was instilled at a very early age, which is also extremely important for us to all to realize how that should be a part of our studies and our world, and for our children to instill that. So
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. And you know, you have such an amazing ability, or unique ability, also to inspire positive change through your work. And so I was wondering if you could share a little bit about how you believe conservation filmmaking can create this sense of urgency for protection of endangered species and the environment.
Right. Well, I think there are so many ways to answer that. So, one thing for me, for instance, is research and academic research is great, but it can be extremely elitist. So when someone like does research, let's say about animals and stuff, and you write a paper, the chances of that paper making its way to everyday people are very, very, very few.
Yeah.
And so I think in academia and in conservation as well, we tend to have our own bubble of people that speak around lingo and around, scientific vocabulary. And it's great, but it's not enough. And I think this is the power of filmmaking, in the sense that it can get into everybody's house. And if you manage and have the ability to make it appealing and to make it cool and to make it interesting, can get the chance of getting everyone hooked. And it doesn't matter, in my opinion, if by the end they know all the facts about the pilot whales. What matters is they kind of care a bit more.
Yeah.
And I know it works for me. Like, I watched documentaries a lot as a kid. Like, I remember my dad used to get the newspaper every Saturday. And at the time, they used to have like this series of BBC documentaries with a newspaper. And I was so fascinated by it. And like those documentaries managed to instill in me that passion. So I never thought, I mean, as a kid, I wanted to do documentaries. Then at some point, it kind of like got lost. So when I had the chance to do it, I was like, okay, this is it. Now I get like the chance to hopefully like transmit to someone how cool this is, right?
Yeah.
How excited I am about it.
That's awesome. It's so cool. And you can absolutely feel and see and experience your passion through just this conversation. Frankly, it comes right out of you, which I love. I think that's so great. So obviously it comes forth and comes out in your work, which is what gravitated me to. I saw a clip of your docuseries. I don't remember if it was passing through YouTube or if it was on LinkedIn. I'm not sure, but it immediately grabbed me. And there's many on Darwin 200, and there's many that are wonderful. They all are. They're all important. But your passion, it exudes off the screen, and it comes right out. So I really hope that others will, go to your documentary series, Guanches of the Sea, and also through that will ultimately, I'm sure, check out a lot of the other projects on the Darwin 200, because I know that's what I did. So that was the impetus for me reaching out to you and asking you to come on, because I just think it's so important for everyone, and for young people, and for anybody who's got a passion for animals, so that we could kind of inspire others, which is the point of your work, which is really, great. And you get into everybody's house with this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's great. And it's funny because your cats you were asking earlier before we started recording, I wonder if my cats will make an appearance. And I was like, well, most of the cats that live in the homes of my guests do make an appearance. So yours is creating some shenanigans back there. I don't know if you yeah.
They were, they were sleeping all day, and the minute I need to start recording, they decide it's the time to chase each other around the house.
Of course they did. They're like high-fiving each other with their little paws in the background. Oh my goodness. So, well, next question. You know, the Guanches of the sea, it does shed light on the devastating impact, obviously, that humans are having. And for this specifically, has to do with the pilot whale and their environment. So I was wondering if first you could share a little bit about what does Guanches mean, and then also and the the significance of it in the title that you've chosen, and then maybe talk a little bit about what you witnessed firsthand on location while you were doing this project and while you were writing about it and then filming about it, the impact that the humans are actually having on the pilot whale.
Right. So the title, it's very anthropological of me. So Guanches of the Sea. Guanches was the native tribe that used to live in Tenerife before the Spanish got there. So it was a native group. I mean, there were many around the Canary Islands, but Guanches were the ones specific to Tenerife. So I had this idea in my mind that I wanted to be something when we research culturally specific, right? Because of course anthropology. And then actually in one of our interviews, Virginia Delgado, who is like the director of one of the NGOs there, Rumbo Sidai, I was asking her about like why are the pilot whales important stuff, and she told me exactly what I was hoping to hear from someone, that these animals are the guanches of the sea. They are the native habitats of this land. They were here before we came here, and hopefully they will continue to be here. So the minute she said that, I was like, okay, this is a title, because this is exactly what I was hoping to be able to transmit, that these are the native people. I mean, we are in their land, or well, in their ocean, to be more precise.
Yeah.
So this is what the title means. The indigenous community of Tenerife are the pilot whales. And so, yes, our research was focused in Tenerife, in the Canary Islands, and even more specifically in a specific region of Tenerife in the southwest, which is called the Teno-Rasca Strip, because it's, well, a strip between the points Teno and Rasca. And so, well, Tenerife has a fascinating environment overall. I mean, this constellation of islands, because they're volcanic, they have amazing nature. And in this strip alone, we have 400 residents. Sorry, my cat. We have 400 pilot whales that form a resident species, and this is very rare for whales because they tend to be migratory species. But in Tenerife, we have these 400 animals, and in Tenerife alone, we can see 1/3 of the world's cetaceans pass by. That means of all the species, 1/3 passes through Tenerife.
That's
and
incredible.
It is, yeah, and this is not counting like turtles and not counting like seabirds and other animals.
Wow.
It's only cetaceans. So yes, so in terms of biodiversity, this is an extremely important place of the world, and for that reason, it's also been awarded a lot of times. It has been recognized for its value, and so on.
Yeah, it sounds like a major hub for the ocean. For the
yeah. It's a biodiversity hotspot. It's extremely important. The thing is, this does not reflect on the protection of this area. So even though you have this area that everyone speaks of its high value, and it's under Natura 2000 and under Mission Blue protected status, and it's the first European whale heritage site, which is major title. You go there and the reality is not what you expect. So as we also show in the documentary, you have a massive increase in tourism. Of course, this is an island that depends on tourism, and even more so marine tourism. So you have ferries connecting the islands, you have kayaks and jet skis and diving boats and everything, all sorts of touristic activities in a marine protected area. Plus, you have the fishing and the overfishing. You have 2 fishing farms inside the marine protected area. Plus, all the normal issues like global warming and the sewage system and pollution and all that. We didn't even touch that. Right. We didn't even touch like the warming of the sea and the fishing and the pollution. We only focused on marine traffic because it was so evident that you could just not ignore it.
Right.
And so for anyone that doesn't know, to kind of explain why marine traffic is a big issue, whales are acoustic animals, or all cetaceans are, which means that we perceive our world through our eyes, most of us at least. Whales perceive it through their ears. They live in a world of sound. So sound is how they speak to each other, how they communicate, how they navigate the ocean, how they hunt. And what happens when you have a lot of marine traffic is that you have a lot of noise. It's like someone banging a drum next to our ear all the time.
Yeah.
And when you have all that sound in areas where it's supposed to be quiet, it affects the animals in many ways. So many times they get disoriented, they lose their families, their ability to hunt gets compromised, and in most drastic and tragic events, they can get stranded. And you can have this, especially with pilot whales, it's kind of like a very shocking image. You see them like stranded in the beach altogether. So you can have like 30 animals stranded. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes it also happens because of noise pollution.
Right.
So this is one of the many issues that we focused on, marine traffic and how it affects them.
Did you witness that while you were there, the like stranding of the
Oh
whale?
God, thankfully not. Thankfully not. I mean, that it has happened in this, thankfully not, because it's very tragic. I mean, I've only seen a dead cetacean once, and a dolphin, and it's a very, gruesome.
Disturbing.
I mean, as you can imagine,
No doubt. Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very disturbing.
You hear about
So
this on the news sometimes, and
yeah,
you witness it, but hearing it firsthand from you as to why this is probably happening,
yeah.
makes it real.
Yeah, it's pretty drastic. One case we didn't see, but we talked about it a lot, was the case of Hope. So Hope was a whale. We mentioned it briefly in the third documentary, that had a collision with a boat, because this can also happen, of course, especially when boats are not equipped with radars or they don't follow speed limits. It got hit by a boat, and the propeller of the boat like mutilated her tail. So what happened was, and we talked about this a lot because one of the people we interviewed, Jacobo, was the biologist that actually found her, and she had to be put down because she couldn't swim, of course, and then she would suffer a very agonizing death. So it was very tragic, and also she had a baby, so that makes it even more tragic, of course. So the case of Hope was one of the most like striking events in the island that people talked a lot, and they named her Hope, in hope that this wouldn't happen again. Well, the reality is that this promise hasn't been followed through. And this is not at all the fault of the people, like the biologists and the NGOs. This goes way up, way further up than that.
Yeah. And I mean, what are places like Tenerife and Tenerife to do when they're trying to survive and make a living, and how they do that is through people coming to visit and tourism. And it almost seems like an impossible situation, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard because, of course, you can never blame people for trying to make a living, which is why you also have to be very socially conscious when you talk about conservation. But the thing we need to keep in mind is that all these people depending on the ocean and the whales, because whale watching is a big industry. If things go as they are, one day the whales are either going to die or live.
Right.
So
Yeah.
to kind of like make sure we can continue living off of that, or they can continue living off of that, we need to preserve them. There is no other way, because over exploitation to any degree or to any direction will always lead to an issue. So of course you need to have policies that are socially conscious, and then you need to create alternatives as well. So if you tell people like you can no longer do that, you need to create an alternative for them. But this is why it needs to be like a policy issue, right, in the upper level. And at the same time, I honestly think, and this is something we talked about a lot, there is a place for everything in the ocean. So if you ask me personally, yes, I would like jet skis to not exist. But we're not talking about that. We're trying to keep it, but let's find a way to control it. So this is only an example. One of the solutions we offered was to have designated areas within the marine park where you can do it there. Do it. If your business needs jet ski because it attracts tourists, do it, but do it in a designated area. Don't do it freely in the park, because then you're leaving no space for the animals where they are, quiet and free.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. And there's no reason why there can't be a compromise and a happy balance for everyone. And it's just a matter of, I guess, making that case and making the laws as such, and everybody getting on board and working together for
Yeah.
for the greater good of all, really, in the end.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well,
I mean, it's never easy, but things change. I mean, we see it all around the world, and there is no other way. I mean, at the end of the day, if you ask me, it's hard, but there is literally no other solution.
right. There isn't, because
No.
it would be devastating. The result of doing nothing would be more devastating. So,
Yes, exactly.
yeah, understood. And so another reason why your documentary and all others like it are so important to make this information, awareness and education are the cornerstones to
Yeah,
meaningful change, which is what we need to see in our world. And
absolutely.
yeah, so as a conservationist, your work takes you to a lot of really fabulous places around the world, which is super cool. And with it comes a unique story at every place. And I know that you had just recently gone to Rio, and I was wondering if you wanted to share a little bit about that
Yeah.
project, the conservation project you're working on, and maybe what came out of that experience.
Right, yes. So after Tenerife, because of course the Darwin Project is one that is conducting a voyage around the world, so it's visiting all sorts of amazing places. So we're called to go to Rio again with Lorimer, and this time our project was very different. So even though there are whales in Brazil, we didn't focus on that. We focused on the forest. So the idea was to conduct a kind of like ad hoc biodiversity survey. The idea was that while the other research project were taking place, there was also a very big tree planting initiative. So Darwin 200 collaborated with a local NGO, which is called the Golden Lion Tamarin Association. They work with golden lion tamarins, which is a very small monkey.
Ah,
And what they do is they try to purchase areas of land that are like degraded agricultural lands, and then they're trying to create forest patches. So what we did with them was a big tree planting project, creating a forest corridor between forest patches, in that way to help the monkeys hopefully move back to the area that they have now been forced to abandon. So this was going on, and the idea was to do a documentary about biodiversity. We were comparing biodiversity levels in different types of forests. So secondary forest, this is forest that was degraded and has regenerated naturally, and then replanted areas, and then severely degraded agricultural lands. And the idea of that, it might seem very obvious, but it kind of is, but that's also important. So how in these different lands biodiversity drops drastically and severely. So, in order to do that, we were out in these different types of forests, we were conducting interviews, and we were counting biodiversity. But because none of us is a biologist in this group, we did that by focusing on birds. So, we had with us the pleasure of having Grant Terrell, which is an ornithologist for the Darwin 200 program, and Merlin Halsenboom, who is also another researcher. And they were helping us with this. And so by identifying and counting bird types in these different types of forests, we're trying to use them as an indicator of how well the forest is doing. So, because the species of birds vary drastically from area to area and from type of forest, you can use them as an indicator of how the forest is doing. So, if you're seeing these bigger birds or these younger birds, and so this was kind of the idea to show how this forest has been affected by human activity, how, well, the regenerated forest is on its way to be a healthy forest again, and in a way to also show the importance of tree planting, right? Because we also wanted to showcase that and support the other initiative of the forest corridor.
that's wonderful. That's really great.
Yeah, it
And
was fun.
how long did you spend there doing that?
We spent a week and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, week and a half.
So will you, besides the research, will anyone from your team, or will there be teams that go there and help to continue that work? Or is it just kind of like a short-term research that you do?
Well, this research that we did there was done, and the tree planting. So while we were there, we planted 2,500 trees,
Oh, wow.
seedlings.
Wow.
And the idea is that now that the association has purchased this land, it will be an ongoing process, of course, because you don't plant all the trees at once. So it was kind of like a push start.
Got it.
And we did that, and we did the project. The film isn't out yet. We're still working on it. And yeah, hopefully they will, I mean, not hopefully, I know the association will continue the great work they're doing, because they're really, really doing very good stuff.
That's incredible and super hopeful and really
Yeah.
encouraging. I love that. That's great. It's not just, we're not just talking about documentaries happening here. We're talking about,
Yeah.
the actual good work that's being done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And it's always
fabulous.
nice to work with NGOs. And so this was one of the things I also liked a lot in this program, because we did it in Tenerife and now we did it again in Rio. You go and you collaborate with the people that have already laid the foundation and work there. And so the idea, which I really love, is that you help them and they help you. So of course they give you all the information that they have, and at the same time you hope to support their work and give them some visibility, because at the end of the day we went to Tenerife and we left, but they're still there and
Right.
they have been there for so many years, like fighting the good fight and trying for the whales. Same in Rio, like this association has been doing that for decades with the golden lion tamarins. So it needs to be like a collaborative effort, and hopefully create a network around the world where everyone helps each other, not just segregated work here and segregated work there.
Yeah, that's extremely important. We're supposed to all be doing this as a united front for again, I'm going to say the greater good of all. And if I think we all did that, and, humans and their egos, they can get in the way. And if we all put them aside and just work from, a heart-led place,
Yeah.
we would get so much more done. That's really great. And it, kind of what you're talking about here with all of this gets to my next question, which was going to be about the Darwin 200. And if you can share with us a little bit more about its significance
Mhm.
and significance in what it does and what it's meant to do, as well as, its significance for you personally.
Right. It's a great project. So Darwin 200 is a global conservation project. The idea, and well, the title comes from that as well, is on a ship, a tall ship, it's Dutch, called the Oosterschelde. We are retracing the route Darwin did. So Darwin had a 5-year trip on the Beagle that led like to him collecting all the samples for his research, which then led to his major theories of evolution from a common ancestor and natural selection. So the idea of this program is to retrace this route and then make 32 stops in places where Darwin stopped as well. In every stop, there are young people, all under 30, that come from all around the world for 1 week. And each of them chooses an animal or plant that Darwin took notice in. And then they have to, well, research it and analyze how the condition for that animal or plant has changed from the past to now. What is the current situation? So the threats and also the actions that are being taken to preserve it. And of course, which is the most important, leave something behind, like a proposition for what can be done better. And for every of these questions, there is a report and a short film, which is why every leader at the end has 3 short films, like we did with the whales, and is always in collaboration with local NGOs. So every project is allocated a local expert that's usually from an NGO. So this is kind of like how the project is structured. For me, it was awesome, and it was actually the perfect example of how network works, because this was brought to my attention by the director of the Jane Goodall Institute in Belgium, where I was doing my internship. So my internship finished on March, and Jane Goodall is one of the patrons of the program, alongside Sarah Darwin and Sylvia Earle. And so the Institute of Jane Goodall supports the program, and many young people actually come from the institutes around the world. And she told me like, "Hey, look at this program. I think you would love it." And then the minute I saw it, like I applied in a heartbeat, because I was
Wow.
like, this is ideal, because you get to go to places where you wouldn't easily get the chance to. You get to do like good work and research and documentaries. Each Darwin leader gets allocated a filmmaker, a professional filmmaker. Like for me, it was Lorimer McAndrew, who's a professional, and without whom I wouldn't have done these films, because it's one thing to have the idea, but it's another thing to have an expert who's done this before and who can make your idea into like an actual proper film.
Yeah. Manifest it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think there are so many things that are important about the program. Well, the obvious one is the conservation work that's being done, right? So by the end of this 2-year voyage, you will have 200 different conservation projects around the world. and hopefully actions being taken for each one of these like research areas. You have education. So for young people like me that are passionate about conservation, this is also like a crash course on how to do research and how to form conservation projects, because you're suddenly surrounded by people like Stuart McPherson or Eduardo Villura, who are like the people that run the show, and they've been in conservation for years. So they guide you to how to do your research, how to do your film, and you have this access to information that you wouldn't easily have otherwise. And I think the last and also very, very important is the network. So by the end of it, you have met so many people, and again, you have access into this global now community of 200 young people around the world that are all young and as passionate as you are about their each of their projects and fields. And so by the end of it, hopefully, and I think it's pretty cool to think about, you have these people like spread around the globe, all very passionate and all willing to help each other. And so many people, for example, I know, went to the program as Darwin leaders, and then some of them have their own NGOs back home, and then the ship goes by, and then they receive some Darwin leaders. So, for example, there is this girl, Nina, in Brazil, and she has an amazing project about sea turtles, Project Tamar. And she visited as a leader, and now she's going to receive some Darwin leaders as well. And I think that's so cool.
That's wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so great. And for anyone listening to this who may be a young person or not a young person, maybe somebody who's got a young person in their life that they're thinking, hey, that might be a really great thing for them.
Yes.
What would you suggest for them to go ahead and, research this and maybe throw their name in the hat for a future Darwin project? Now, and you also mentioned 2 years. Does that mean that each person that gets chosen, they go out for 2 years? And that's
No. So each person goes in their project for 1 week.
okay.
So that's way more tangible. So how it works is anyone can go in the website Darwin 200 and submit their application. No one has to have a formal education. I'm not a biologist. You don't have to have studied. All you have had is to show something for your love of conservation and animals and the environment. It can be your passion and your activism and your volunteer work. There are people that have written books for kids, others that plant trees, others that run NGOs. It can be anything. So, because this is what you have to show for it. It doesn't matter if you have a degree. And so you apply, and then based on like how they see your application, they allocate you in a project. So for me, I had done research on whales, so they allocated me in Tenerife because there was a whale project there. So I would really, really urge anyone interested to apply, because I had a great, great time doing it. And it's so fun. And it's one of those things that you don't know if an opportunity like that will ever come again.
Yeah.
And you don't know if like life is going to take you again in these corners of the world.
Yeah, I think it would change your life forever for the better. I can't imagine how it could possibly be anything less than that. It just sounds just so incredible. And I hope that this information gets out to a lot of people. And
Yes, absolutely.
yeah, for sure. And so I was wondering if you could also tell us about any future conservation projects that you have coming up, what new content maybe we can expect from you and from your Darwin 200 work.
Right. So, well, first and foremost, the movie from Rio needs to come out. So the work we did in the biodiversity surveys, hopefully this will be out soon. And this is one thing to expect. I'm also always working and thinking about how we can still continue the work we did in Tenerife. So my idea now, and I've been working closely with one of our sponsor, which is CCSL, Carbon Capture Solutions, and John and Amber from there, because they sponsored the project Bid in Tenerife. And we wanted to, after doing all the research, launch an educational campaign. Because one of the major issues there, and we touch upon that a bit on the third documentary, is the lack of education. So if you're a tourist, even if you're like the most well-intended tourist, you might go in this area and be like, oh, I want to rent a sailing boat. And no information is given to you about the fact that you're entering a marine protected area, that there are protected animals. So it's important to give people the benefit of the doubt that if they know better, they might do better.
Right.
So this is kind of like what we have been working on now, our brainstorming about how to better do it now, to have an educational campaign or information material in the 4 ports from which you can embark inside the marine protected area. So hopefully this is something that you will see soon. And yeah, I mean, I'm always hoping that maybe I will rejoin the Darwin Project again if an opportunity comes that's right for me and for them as well. And I will be joining another program in June, another conservation program, which actually I found out from Darwin because again, it's a domino effect.
Of course. You'll
Yes.
have to, yeah, keep me posted, and we'll have to follow your travels and your journeys and your conservation
Hopefully
work.
there will be many.
I, I
Hopefully.
have I have no doubt you have so much passion inside of you and so much good to do in this world. So I'm certain that that will be the case. And before we conclude our discussion, I wanted to share with everyone a poignant passage from the report that you did
Mhm,
for this Guanches
mhm,
project. And the excerpt that I read encapsulates your passion and dedication to your work so beautifully. So, and it goes like this: It is hard to imagine a past different from the one we know, but we owe it to ourselves to imagine a better future. And even more so, we have the moral responsibility to use our imagination and, in Jane Goodall's words, the indomitable human spirit to the service of the animals that were here long before we came ashore and will hopefully still be here after we are, maybe, gone. History is written by the winner, and the losing side more often than not remains forgotten. Before the Spanish colonized Tenerife in 1494, a whole other world was already up and running here, the Guanches, the natives of the island, who were doomed to a history of violence and silence. Much like them, the pilot whales are the Guanches of the Tenerifean Sea. May they not be silenced, and may they not be forgotten. This is for her, the Guanche of the sea, the pilot whale. Iro, that was really beautiful, and I really felt that was important to read for other people. And I can feel
Thank
your
you.
passion in that and the passion in your project. To you and Lorimer both, I thank you for your remarkable contribution to the world of conservation and for giving a voice to these pilot whales of Tenerife and beyond. And Iro, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights, your experiences, your passion and dedication towards wildlife and environmental conservation. And, you're an inspiration to so many, and a testament really to the power of storytelling and creating such wonderful positive change in the world. And folks, I just want to let you know that all the links to Iro's conservation work, the Darwin 200 project, and other resources will be included in the video description. And that will be on All About Animals Radio, the YouTube channel, and also on the Rising Lioness's Wiki Animal page. And the Wiki Animal is just like Wikipedia. So folks, I encourage you to check it out, except it's all things related to the protection and conservation of animals. So it's super important and teeming with tons of incredible information, and it will definitely hook you in. So we encourage our listeners to join us on this journey to safeguard our planet's future. Together, let's work towards a sustainable future for all. Lastly, I would be remiss if I did not say thank you, a heartfelt bit of gratitude to our audience. Your dedication to conservation and making a positive change in the world matters every single day. So please don't think that it doesn't. And I thank you all for being animal advocates and warriors. Iro, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on. It was wonderful having you. And I wish
Thank you. Thank you for having this platform. It's very important to have these voices heard.
Yeah, I agree.
Pretty cool.
And I feel blessed as well. Thank you, All About Animals Radio, for doing this for us. And I wish you a beautiful day. Happy holidays to you and to everyone else. And namaste. And I'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
We are the main threat to the pilot whale, and so now we need to be her biggest advocate.